So does everybody see the screen?
Yes.
All right, cool. So the first level is the mention of the word Meisner. The mention of the word Meisner acting technique automatically should take your brain to teaches the actor to live truthfully in imaginary circumstances. Yes? And so when we break down living truthfully in imaginary circumstances, this is what comes to mind. The principles to master, which are reality of doing, living in the now only. Yes? Truly
Yes.
listening and using your instincts, not your mind. Truly understanding those segments will make text and your ability to absorb and project yourself into text much easier. Alrighty then, we'll start at the start. When I say Meisner, you say
living truthfully in imaginary circumstances.
excellent. Excellent use of the specific vocabulary. Now, about living truthfully in imaginary circumstances, that's broken down into 4 categories. Noah hit me with one of them.
Living in the moment. Being in the moment now.
Or living in the now. I want us to use very specific.
Oh, wait a minute. My computer is definitely lagging.
No, it's all good.
Let me exit the meeting and rejoin.
Okie dokie. We have actively listening. We have living in the now. The reality of.
Of doing.
The reality of doing. And what's the 4th one?
I know it is thought. It is.
Here's a hint. Use the force, Luke. Use the force, Luke.
Wait, when he said that,
Acting with your instincts and not with your mind. Here, let me help. Meisner, living truthfully in imaginary circumstances. Right? As a part of living truthfully in imaginary circumstances, we have these 4 sections. Let's put it in an order that'll help us. First of all, the reality of doing. What are you doing? Actively listening. What does actively listening help you to do? Live in the now. And when you're living in the now, that becomes a key to using your instincts and not your mind.
Right.
Yes? And so that'll help us.
Okay.
Or you can also interchange the first thing you do with actively listening.
I'm just writing this down.
Actively listening, when you're actively listening, you're doing something. So you're actively listening, you're doing something. That's the reality of doing. That reality of doing and that listening puts you in the now, because you're not listening to what will be said. You're not listening to what has been said. You're listening to what's being said actively in the now. By listening to what's being said actively in the now, you're not acting for the future. You're not acting for the past. You're being for the now. That puts you in touch with your instincts and not your mind, which is processing the past or trying to process the future. Yes?
Got it.
So let's be smooth. When I say Meisner, you say
Living truthfully in imaginary circumstances. Under that is actively listening, living in the moment now, trusting your instincts, and the reality of doing.
No,
all right. Yes.
It only took us a few tries.
Now let's be a little bit more specific. As opposed to saying trusting your instincts, let's say using your instincts as opposed to your mind. Use your instincts, get out of your head.
so I know this is like a really broad question, but I was gonna ask like, what do you think makes like a great actor? But now that you were just talking about it, you were saying that what makes people good is like that they listen. So would that kind of be your answer?
Yes, that's certainly one of the cornerstones. Listening, being able to respond. Um, Meisner is very much so a commentary on impulse training.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and impulse training is the core of improvisation, and so that would be another cornerstone of a good actress, a good actor, somebody who can listen and impulsively respond to what they're getting. Impulsively would be another word for instinctually
Mm-hmm.
respond to what they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once you add listening to instinct, and then those two things to basic, understanding of given circumstances and memorization, you're well on your way to being a very good performer.
Awesome.
You're well on your way to being a very good performer when you have those in place. You know,
Right.
an understanding of the background, given circumstances, the ability to memorize information, fairly quickly. And there are a bunch of techniques for people who don't necessarily do that, naturally. There's some people who can do that naturally. There's some people who need to work at it a bit. And for people who need to work on memorization just a bit, there are a multitude of techniques to help you do that. And then add, listening and instinct to that, you're well on your way. I would
Right.
say the rounding off of all of those components would be an excellent uh, physical vocabulary. You
Okay.
know, getting in contact with the proprioceptors in your body that lets you know where a limb is without you looking at it. You know, that type of stuff, and just kind of like being um, aware of the different ranges of motion that you are capable of,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can build a vocabulary of movement based on that.
Right.
I think those are the the real strong cornerstones of being an excellent performer.
Thank you. I
Hey,
know.
thanks for the question. I appreciate that.